Hello. Welcome
Hi.
welcome back to the theory of physical health and mental health. This is Garrison. I'm here with Sarah.
Hi, guys.
So, it's been brought to my attention that Sarah, this is a very deep personal story for Sarah, so we're gonna let her take it away.
Yeah, okay. So I've got a pretty long history with mental health, especially, and physical health. My history kind of starts with the fact that my family is kind of a different setup than a lot of most. My dad, he is Iranian, so, first there's that. Like, there's the whole cultural differences, and then like my mother's white. There was no religion in my house. I am also an only child. So that kind of led things to be pretty different. Um, there was like a time in my life when my dad and mom were both living in separate houses. They weren't divorced or anything. They weren't separated. They were just living apart due to careers. My dad used to work at Delphi, the local factory around here, and they let him go. And unfortunately, there was no work around here, so he decided one day to move to Vermont. There was a lot more work out there. So this all happened around the time I was like 13, 12, 13. And so, like, a very delicate age for somebody to basically have a parent move away. Like, like I can understand divorce is like a complete separation. There's a fine line there, right? But like, when your parents are together, but they're not living in the same house, it's a completely different dynamic. Because they're always talking, this and that. They, like they communicate together, and there's lots of love, sure, but there is a huge separation. So around that time, like I was kind of a bigger child. I used to look at my dad and say, like, oh, I want to be just like him. So he would like stack his plate at dinner time full of food, and so I would look at him and be like, oh, I want to be just like him, so I would do the same. So I gained a lot of weight pretty quickly as a kid, and around 12, 13 was also the time that like I was really big on the internet, so I would make a lot of internet friends, and that's kind of how I socialized. I didn't really socialize with a lot of like close friends, didn't talk to them about a lot of my issues. So I made friends online, and they were probably not the best influence on me. And I also took up cutting during that time. I had a boyfriend that told me about cutting. He said that this was how he coped with a lot of his issues. So um, yep, around 13, I started cutting, and I probably cut for about 2 years until it got so bad that my parents found out, and they thought I was suicidal. They thought I was going to kill myself, and they decided to basically force me to see a therapist once a week. And it was with that therapist that I was diagnosed with the manic depression, and I was put on medication for depression. So it was kind of that kind of changed basically my whole lifestyle. Um, as far as antidepressants go, I wish I didn't have to be on them, and I'm sure a lot of people wish that they didn't have to be. But unfortunately, sometimes for the betterment of humans, the betterment of physical and mental health, it is necessary for people to be on medications, and I fully believe that. Um, not everybody is in the situation where they can go out and go exercise because they don't have that chemical there in their brains that is basically motivating them. Um, so I started my antidepressants probably about 14. No, maybe it was about, no, 16. 16 is when I started on antidepressants. And I broke up with my boyfriend at that time because I realized that he wasn't good for me. He wasn't motivated himself. I switched to vegetarian, and I started working out every single day for 30 minutes. And I went from 215 pounds to 135 in about a year. And so I literally changed my whole lifestyle, kind of like once I woke up from my depression. And it's a really weird concept to think about as somebody without depression, because you don't understand what it's like to be depressed, or like it's hard to describe. Like, I was talking to Garrison earlier, and I was describing him. It's like a roller coaster. It's like, like there's really tall hills and then there's really low valleys when you're depressed, especially like manic depression, because it is such high highs and then all of a sudden extremely low lows, and it's an uncontrollable mechanism that goes on in your brain constantly. Like, you have these amazing feelings, and then all of a sudden you're down, all the way down, and nothing can control that. So the way, like, these antidepressants worked for me was like, it kind of balanced out those really high highs and really low lows. I was described as apathetic by my therapist once I started seeing her. She basically said that you are constantly in a state of disassociation. So I didn't associate with life, I didn't associate with people, I didn't associate with how to live like a normal person. So having that antidepressant took that away for me to be able to feel empathetic towards myself, not just other people. So it was pretty interesting to see that lifestyle change in me, especially, I'm sure, for my friends, because I lost a lot of friends because of how I acted during that time. I was very, very inconsistent and uncontrollable. I was like a storm, basically. And it was unpredictable how I would act. So it was, I don't know, a very weird time, especially during your teenage years. Those are very interesting times to have that happen to you. As of recently, I've started on antidepressants again because of certain situations that kind of arised to the point where I needed them. And now, like, I feel fantastic. I feel great. It's one of those things where it's like, especially if it is genetic, and it is genetic in my family, is depression is genetic in my family. My grandma, she was very depressed throughout her entire life. My father would probably be considered somewhat of an alcoholic. I'm sorry, Dad, I love you, but you do drink a lot of wine unnecessarily, even though you think it's healthy for you. And so it's really kind of an interesting balance to have that kind of thing happen in your life, especially when it is genetic. And for a lot of people it is.
I appreciate your candor. That was great. So you mentioned your strange family dynamic, and you hear quite frequently about single parents and stuff like that. But your case is, I haven't heard as much, and I really don't know what to make of it because it's such a rare case.
Yeah, I mean, and I completely understand that, because not a lot of my friends would even understand that when I was growing up. They would be like, what? Like, your parents aren't living together, but they're not divorced? Like, I would constantly get those questions. And my mom, she herself is an amazing woman. Like, she's probably one of the strongest women I know. But as far as motivation goes, she was super lacking as a parent. She did not know how to keep me motivated and keep me active. However, there was a time, like because my dad was away, like I wished that I had had that during that time because he is extremely motivated. He's always active, he's always doing something. And I feel like if he was in my life during that time, things might have turned out a little bit different. It was also during a time when, okay, so you know how we just had 9/11? One of the things I've been kind of reflecting on lately is the fact that because 9/11 happened, I wasn't allowed to talk about my heritage. And this is just a personal thing. Like, I wasn't told not to talk about my heritage. Being an Iranian, basically like half Iranian, a lot of people looked at the Middle East and they thought all of us were terrorists. So I would get a lot of exclusion from being able to talk about who I was during that time because I grew up, in middle school and high school thinking that people didn't like Middle Easterns. And it was a constant fear. Like in the news, from my friends, people would constantly call us towel heads and camel jockeys and sand eaters. And, like I was once asked by a boss, this was my first job I ever had, was working at a Pizza Hut, and my boss during that time would constantly make jokes at me, asking if my dad put a bomb under my car, like not to show up at work the next day because he was working on my car. Like it was just a really weird time to grow up being half Middle Eastern. And I don't know how other people feel about it, but I'm sure there's a lot of uproar now because it's easier to talk about.
Yeah, I think that, okay, so I've experienced racism just like maybe like 2 or 3 times, but that's covert racism, and I think that in certain circles in America, it's acceptable to offend people from the Middle East and Islam, and that's covert racism.
What do you mean by covert racism?
Like they're saying it to you, to your face.
Oh yeah.
But like, there, many cases of covert.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah. Wait. Overt. That's what I meant. Overt racism.
Okay.
First time, and then okay. So yeah, covert. I think a lot of the people that have been covert for so many years have found their God,
Yeah.
if you will, and are feeling a little more open about that. But I want to bring this back to what you were saying about your therapist.
Yeah.
Talking about disassociation, right?
Right.
Right. She said you had disassociation.
Yep.
And I have a question. So, do you think you disassociated yourself because of your family dynamic, your weight, or your like boyfriend or stuff like that, to sort of withdraw into yourself because those outside things have caused you anguish? So, is that possibly?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely say that a lot of it kind of messed with me. Like, it just kind of messed me up, especially as a kid. It's a lot of everything that had happened. So, like, thinking about it now, I definitely just kind of wanted to be somebody else. Like, so I completely disassociated with everything. So that's kind of, yeah, I can definitely see what you mean by that.
Mm. Well, I think that's about it for part 1. Come back for part 2. We're gonna change the subject a little bit, and hope you enjoy.
Thanks for listening.
Welcome back, to the theory of physical and mental health with Garrison.
Time for a little laughter after that deep conversation
Yeah.
we had just had.
With Garrison and Sarah. So we're gonna talk about the schools, like schools and exercise and things like that, and its relation to physical and mental health. So the study about kids in sports performing better in class, that study's been around for quite a while. I don't think anyone's disputing that. But something that I found out recently was, which is pretty similar to be honest, is that regular exercise can increase brain function and thus intelligence. Sarah, what do you have to think about that?
Well, I was just thinking about the fact that, like, Texas, right? Like, their schools are super into physical education. Like, they've got the best gyms. They make all their kids go through, like, 4 years of physical ed. Because they've got that same idea where they think that physical health is tied to mental health. So, like, every time I, like, see a documentary about their schools, I get a little bit jealous because I wish that I had those gyms in, like, school, and I wish they talked about it as much. So I do think it's very important. I hated gym growing up because I was a fat kid, and everybody made fun of me. But one day, like, I remember I was, like, super proud of myself because I went from starting at the beginning of the semester to the end of the semester, going from 0 push-ups to 13 push-ups. And the gym teacher said I was the best at it, so I felt really good about myself. But other than that, not a big deal.
Yeah, I was great at dodgeball.
Mm-hmm.
If we were playing dodgeball, you wanted me on your team.
Yeah. See, everybody hated me on their teams because I was so big, I didn't know my own strength, so I would knock everybody down. But I was good at it. I just was kind of a bully, I guess. Mm-hmm. The big bully on the team.
Did they have the picking system where one person picks one person?
Yes.
It's like, really?
Yeah.
I thought they got rid of that because it.
Well, okay. Let me think back. Mr. Smith, what did he do? I think he tied us into red shirts and blue shirts or something like that. Just here, take one. Maybe that's what it was. But I'm pretty sure we picked our teams too.
I was at this summer camp maybe like 12 years ago, and we were playing basketball, and we were split up into shirts and no shirts.
Well, it's easy for guys.
Yeah. Luckily, the day was almost over, so I didn't have to take my shirt off. So.
Nice.
So, maintenance. I think mental health is can be linked to how you present yourself and how you feel about yourself.
Yep.
And how if you aren't motivated, sort of what Sarah was saying earlier, if you aren't motivated, then you aren't compelled to look your best
and be your best. Mm-hmm.
Which I think could be linked to several things. Sort of what Sarah was bringing up about genes and her family history with that, or also things like food and.
Oh yeah, what's in your gut?
Right, what's in your gut.
What did they say? The gut's just like the second brain.
Right. Yeah. Have you heard the? I think it's a study about the bacteria in your stomach and intuition. You. Right. Yeah. That's interesting. It's cool.
Right. I think about the food in my stomach and how it's going through my body. You don't really think about these things until you change your diet. like it makes you start thinking about those things. Like, you know, like when you started going vegan, like what was your first inclination?
Uh, um, what can I eat now?
Oh shit. I fucked up. What can I eat now? Yeah, no, that's a pretty good one. That's like the oh shit moment. What did I do?
Well, not like that.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, so I don't only want to minimize suffering, but how can I improve myself in the process? I think that's
Right.
yeah.
So like, when you go looking for foods, do you look for like the least processed food that you can eat that's also vegan?
Yeah, I don't even touch things that are in like bags mostly. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
kind
try to
of.
get as fresh as I can because even like I think I had fresh pineapples like for the first time like maybe 3 years ago, and
Wow.
before that I had canned, and I thought that I didn't like pineapples because of what they tasted like in a can, but really they're freaking good.
They're so good.
Yeah.
And it's really good for you too.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I don't know. Like, see, my first thing is like to always think about what's going into my body. Like, I don't know. My dad makes fun of me because he thinks that everything I put into my body now is cancerous because it's vegan. So it's you know, so it's a weird concept to think about.
That's why I try not to like eat like soy and things like that
Mhm.
because it's not really uh it's processed, it's not natural.
Right.
So I I don't really know the long-term effects of that, especially on me since I'm male and soy isn't too
Well,
great.
well, it does something to your hormones. Like because there's so much
It
more
makes you impotent,
testosterone.
right?
Yeah, well, there's so much testosterone in you. If you put estrogen in your body, it would create an imbalance of hormones. So you might end up having more hair than usual, or less hair than usual, or
Bigger boobies.
bigger boobies, or I don't know, small testes, or you know something along those lines.
Mhm.
But that's over a long time of consuming estrogen enriched foods.
You know, something that I've never forgotten since the day that I heard it was was like maybe 12 years ago. And if anyone remembers the show, The Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy,
Oh
there was
yes.
this episode where they met this old fitness guy,
Oh yeah.
and
That
he
was like one of my favorite ones.
and he was talking about how to live forever by adding bonus years with good health. And I've never forgotten about it, and I kind of live by that.
Yes. And he escaped the Grim Reaper every year.
Yeah, yeah.
I can't even remember how old he said he was in the show. I think he was like 109 or something like that. Still going. Well, I don't know. I think about this amazing woman that I saw like a brief documentary about on Facebook. And she's like, I don't know, like in her 60s or 70s. And she decided when she was about 50 that she and her friend wanted to go and start lifting weights. Like she was, you know, she was never really like overweight or anything throughout her middle years. But she decided to go and get physically fit with her friend, and now she's like this super badass weightlifting grandmother. Like she's probably like a great grandmother right now, but she looks bomb as hell. And like I want to be like that when I'm 70. I don't want to be in a wheelchair. I don't want to have to wear diapers. Like I want to be like a punk ass meaty person when I'm older.
Yeah, one of my distant family members that lives in DC, she's also vegan, and she runs like 12 miles a day or something.
What?
And
How does she have
she's
time to run 12 miles a day?
I don't know, but she's like in her 60s, I think, and
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I run like 6 miles like 3 times a week, but I mean, like that's insane for like 12 miles,
So
you know.
she's retired then, so she's got the time to do it.
Yeah, yeah, I think so.
All right.
But yeah, that's seeing old folks with like abs and stuff.
I mean, it's kind of cool, you
Yeah,
know. Like people are just living longer now. I think maybe the key is I don't know.
they're adding bonus years with good health. That's
Yes, living life.
but also while we're still on the subject of like food and such, certain lack of nutrients can can have an effect on your mental health as
True.
well. Uh, I think this is a problem for a lot of people that have very restrictive diets, such as um, vegetarians and vegans, things like that.
Well, I think Atkins diet too. Have you ever heard about Atkins diet?
Mm, Rowan Atkinson, is that his diet?
It,
Mr. Bean.
oh, no. No, Atkins diet. My parents have done like all kinds of diets, so I know about South Beach diet. I know about Atkins diet. Atkins diet is kind of a weird one, where you mostly will eat protein versus carbs. So that's kind of like the idea. So I remember when I used to work at Pizza Hut, there was these two older women that would come in, and there was a buffet at Pizza Hut, right? So, and you know, like the meaty pizzas that only had like bacon, sausage, pepperoni, like all the big meats on there. They would come into the buffet like probably like once a week and just sit there for like maybe 2 hours on their lunch break and only eat the meat on the pizza. So, I mean, to me, that's like the worst kind of form of diet. Like, when you start a diet like that, you got to be careful because, you know, like even just eating meat or eating one form of what's on your diet, especially if it's coming in a processed, like that's just not good for you. I don't know. Those ladies
Right.
were crazy.
Right. I think a lot of people have the wrong idea about dieting. Like, oftentimes you'll find people starving themselves, which is counterintuitive, really, because if you starve yourself, you're basically sending a signal to your body,
That you need more food.
right? And since it doesn't know when it's gonna be fed next, it tends to hold on to things more the next time that you feed it. So yeah, so those of you dieting out there, please diet responsibly.
Die responsibly.
Diet, diet.
Diet responsibly. Yeah, don't die. That's the last thing we want for you to do. Don't end up in the hospital. You know, just be mindful. Go to the doctor. Get blood tests taken. Make sure you're not iron deficient, calcium deficient. You know, just be wary of what kind of vitamins and minerals your body needs or is lacking thereof.
Yep. Um, is there anything that you wanted to bring up?
Well, okay, so mental and physical health. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the politics of it. So I had a conversation probably about a year and a half ago with somebody who was, this was before Donald Trump became elected. He advocated for Donald Trump because he liked the idea of building a wall to keep immigrants out. And, like I was trying to like understand him. So I gave him, like the ability to like communicate with me about it. And his reasoning was that, if you were sick, wouldn't you want to keep the bad bacteria out of your body? So, like, he's thinking of a nation as basically like a sick person. And to me, I was like, yes. You know, it. The thing is like, you would definitely want to keep those people out, but that's not the answer for a nation. Um, for me, it's about mental and physical health within our own nation to create a safer place. So for me, it's like not a lot of people talk about these things, these mental and physical health attributes about life that are necessary to create healthy people. And speaking of the United States, we are the least healthy nation in the world. And not a lot of people will recognize it because they're so caught up in their own life, or they're so caught up in their own mental, I would say mental blockage. It's like a mental blockage that they cannot cope with the idea of being a healthy person. You know, you tell them not to eat that cheeseburger, they're going to eat that cheeseburger.
Also, don't we work the most out of most countries? So, uh,
I don't know, except for China.
right, and we don't really have much time to cook and such.
Exactly.
So, a lot of people tend to rely on fast food, which is unfortunate.
And they feed this to their kids. Child obesity is extremely high in the United States. I mean, there's a reason we want to talk about this, and it's because there needs to be a way for people to come out of that. So, I don't know. What do you think about the healthcare bill, about trying to make healthcare universal for our country?
I think what I think about it, because I definitely know what you're talking about. So,
Sorry, I'm a political science major at Sinclair right now, so I want to talk about these things.
well, we're actually kind of running low on time, so we no, we can we can talk about this on another show.
All right, awesome. We're gonna talk about obesity next time.
Yep. All right. See ya.
Thanks, guys.